Good morning, you're watching NewsX. I'm Vaishali Kohli. In a major boost to bilateral ties, India and the US have released a joint statement announcing a framework for an interim trade agreement. This historic step, building on discussions between PM Narendra Modi and President Donald Trump, paves the way for a broader bilateral trade agreement. Both countries said the interim deal reflects a shared commitment to fair and balanced trade, improved market access, and more resilient supply chains. The agreement is being positioned as a key step towards a comprehensive trade pact between the two partners. Let's take a look at what the joint statement really states. Let me show you that, viewers. We'll have that up on the screen. The United States-India joint statement is what we're talking about. Let me take you through the details. Now, the US and India are pleased to announce that they've reached a framework for an interim agreement regarding reciprocal and mutually beneficial trade. That's what the statement reads. And moving further, now today's framework reaffirms the country's commitment to the broader US-India bilateral trade agreement negotiations launched by President Donald J. Trump and Prime Minister Narendra Modi on February the 13th, 2025, which will include additional market access commitments and support more resilient supply chains. The interim agreement between the US and India will represent a historic milestone in our country's partnership, demonstrating a common commitment to reciprocal and balanced trade based on mutual interests and concrete outcomes. Let's now look at the key terms of the interim agreement, viewers. This is, of course, between the United States and India. Now, let's talk about what it includes. Now, India will eliminate or reduce tariffs on all US industrial goods and a wide range of US food and agricultural products, including dried distiller grains, red sorghum for animal feed, tree nuts, fresh and processed food, soybean oil, wine and spirits, and additional products. Now, the United States will apply a reciprocal tariff rate of 18% under Executive Order 14257 of April the 2nd, which is regulating imports with a reciprocal tariff to rectify trade practices that contribute to large and persistent annual US goods trade deficits. As amended on originating goods of India, including textile and apparel, leather and footwear, plastic and rubber, organic chemicals, home decor, artisanal products, and certain machinery. Let's go to the next point. The United States, will also remove tariffs on certain aircraft and aircraft parts of India imposed to eliminate threats to national security found in Proclamation 9704 of March 8, 2018. The third point, viewers, let's get to that now. The US and India commit to provide each other preferential market access in sectors of respective interest on a sustained basis. The US and India will establish rules of origin that ensure that the benefits of the agreement accrue predominantly to the US and India. The United States and India will address non-tariff barriers that affect bilateral trade. India agrees to address long-standing barriers to the trade in US medical devices, eliminate restrictive import licensing procedures that delay market access for or impose quantitative restrictions on US information and communication technology, and determine, with a view towards a positive outcome within 6 months of entry into force of the agreement, whether US developed or international standards, including testing requirements, are acceptable for the purpose of US exports entering the Indian market in identified sectors. Now, for the purposes of enhanced ease of compliance with applicable technical regulations, the US and India intend to discuss their respective standards and conformity assessment procedures for mutually agreed sectors. In the event of any changes to the agreed upon tariffs of either country, the US states and India agree that the other country may modify its commitments. The United States and India will work toward further expanding market access opportunities through the negotiations of the BTA. The US and India agree to strengthen economic security alignment to enhance supply chain resilience and innovation through complementary actions to address non-market policies of third parties. India intends to purchase $500 billion of US energy products, aircraft and aircraft parts, precious metals, technology products and cooking coal over the next 5 years. India and the US will significantly increase trade in technology products, including graphics processing units and other goods used in data centers, and expand joint technology cooperation. And now the final point here is that the US and India commit to address discriminatory or burdensome practices and other barriers to digital trade, and to set a clear pathway to achieve robust, ambitious and mutually beneficial digital trade rules as part of the BTA. The final paragraph here says that the US and India will promptly implement this framework and work toward finalizing the interim agreement with a view to concluding a mutually beneficial BTA consistent with the roadmap agreed in the terms of reference. BTA consistent with the roadmap agreed, again, as terms of reference. So that is what the gist of it is, viewers. And now I have Brian Thomas joining me with more details. Brian, what more can you add to this?
Clear details, and yes, very importantly, both White House and New Delhi have released this interim trade framework that both sides call a historic milestone and even a foundation for a broader bilateral trade agreement, whereas the joint declaration also emphasizes reciprocal, balanced trade, strengthened economic ties, and even measurable outcomes, with implementation beginning immediately while negotiations continue towards a full pact expected by mid-March 2026 itself. So clearly, yes, very importantly, this interim framework lays pathwork towards full trade pact, the tariff cut to 18% where US moves to a reciprocal tariff structure, punitive levies removed, India to ease tariffs on US goods where industrial and farm import duties reduced or even eliminated per se. Not only that, India has also agreed to reduce Russian oil purchase and expand US energy imports with potential $500 billion in US purchases across energy, tech, goods itself, and even legal agreement even expected soon after this very joint statement. So clearly there will be economic impact, export competitiveness, supply chain realignment, geopolitical implications of energy diversification, and even very importantly a trade realignment at this strata that we are talking about. Vaishali.
All right, I want to go across now to Dr. Sharad Kohli, who's a senior economist. Dr. Kohli, I want to begin by asking you, we've of course laid out the terms that have come out so far. What do you have to say on those?
Good morning, Vaishali, to you and the viewers. Well, first of all, this is a welcome step. The 25% additional tariff has been withdrawn. I think that's heartening news. However, because one of the conditions in this declaration says that India will be back in the tariff regime if it buys Russian oil. To the best of my knowledge, at this point of time, we are still buying about 17 to 20% oil from Russia. So one needs to see if this can immediately stop. I mean, what kind of deadlines has US set? And we should keep in mind that India-Russia ties are quite deep-rooted and very, very ancient. So we cannot I think practically it may not be possible to immediately stop Russian oil. So that's one condition. Plus, the declaration also speaks about, animal feed, red sorghum, peanuts, fresh processed food. So I think the details need to be examined because the final deal in the month of March, I feel will provide more clarification. Another part of the statement which you were reading, Vaishali, just now, says that India is going to import $500 billion of energy and other products from the US. Well, our current import before this whole deal thing started was about $40 billion. So which means that in the next 4 years, shall I say, it will have to grow by about 12 times, which to me seems a little far-fetched because how can we be importing $500 billion? We were, of course, looking at $500 billion of bilateral trade, which was the target when last year in February 2025, when the whole deal discussion started and before 2nd April, reciprocal tariffs were imposed. So $500 billion of bilateral trade is imaginable, but $500 billion of import from US, I think we will have to work out the numbers as to how is this being arrived at, whether India needs those many, energy volumes, for that matter, because India's entire import bill, as of now, is a little above that. So there are certain parts of this declaration, Vaishali, which I feel may need further clarification. Per se, I think this is a great step. From today, the additional 25% goes. And for the people who are wondering, a very interesting aspect, Vaishali, which I would like to mention here. For the people who are wondering that how was this 18% arrived? Because the policy of US is reciprocal. So average tariff which India was imposing on US products when US products landed in India was around 16 to 18%. So I think that average has been taken. It was, to my mind, it was 16. However, I think some of the US officials or calculations must have felt that it's 18%. So I think that is because it's reciprocal. What you levy, we levy. That's how 18% has been defined. And then the statement says that India is going to levy 0% tariff. That also, I think needs to be seen, because if Indian products are being subject to 18%, then will we make 0 for all American products? That clarification, that shall I say, reality needs to be checked. Otherwise, a very good deal. But when I read the fine print, and when I see from my spectacles of reality, I feel that there may be some tweaks required here and there. Russian oil for me is a big issue, because it says that if India doesn't stop buying Russian oil, then this tariff would be back. That's what it impliedly says. So we need to see. Otherwise, a very welcome step. $30 trillion of American economy. Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal says that $30 trillion of economy is now open for Indian exporters, which was also open before this whole thing started. So I think it is now up to the Indian exporters to pick up products, search for American markets where Indian goods are competitive. We are in a very competitive position vis-a-vis Vietnam, Indonesia, China particularly, because China is still in 34% bracket. So I think the Indian goods will now become more competitive vis-a-vis Chinese goods. I think for me that's the biggest takeaway. And I think Indian exporters should get back to their order books, plan their fairs, exhibitions, promotional activities to see that they grab that market with immediate effect, Vaishali.
Right, Dr. Kohli.